Okay, so this is for today's format, like maybe a little bit different with another, like Quincy won't have any presentation, but we're gonna having a talk with him. So the first one will be an introduction for the host and co-host and also the moderator as speakers, of course. And then the second one to the third is the main session. And the last one will be post-event huddle. And I'd like to give you guys a little bit what is that? A little bit interesting things that Quincy will join us on the post event huddle. So if you are curious more, you can stay until at the very last time here. Okay, next. Okay, um, I'd like to introduce myself as well. Before that, this is a little bit about me. So my name is Cynthia. I'm currently on the HRPR team, and I'm beyond happy actually to know that PVE Talk has grown so far because we have inspired so many young talents, and also we have invite so many experts to join with us. And then now we got Quincy Larson. It's such a new for us in this year. And then I was graduate from Universitas Gadjah Mada, and I've been working at Garuda Indonesia before. And previously, sorry, for the fun fact, I enjoy BTS song lately. So are there any ARMY here? I hope so. Okay, next. So as our company mission to inspire delight through hospitality innovation that will positively transform our guest partners and also employees, Bukit Vista as a digital startup on property management has been managed many and hundreds of properties in Bali, Nusa Penida, and also Yogyakarta. So you can see several of our properties on the next slide. So we got properties here, like we got in Ubud, Jimbaran, Bingin. Also, yeah, everywhere actually. You guys can find out more about our information on our website, that is bukitvista.com. And then, speaking of innovation itself, Bukit Vista eTalk is one of our innovation where we invite speakers, experts to inspire the young generation, to inspire you guys actually, that will positively transform yourself. And this event won't be happen without the collaboration from our team, for our co-host. And then for this one, I'd like to give the time to Sajid first. Sajid, I'd like to
Hi.
let you introduce your friends here.
All right. Thanks. Thank you very much. All right. So, hi guys. My name is Sajid, and I am the DSC lead for Monash University, Malaysia. And today I would like to introduce the DSC in a nutshell. So, starting off, we are a student-based community found in many universities around the world. And our main goal is to engage with the student community and help them grow their knowledge through peer-to-peer learning, and also build solutions for local businesses. Moving on to the next slide. Moving on to the next slide, we can see the next slide. We can see that we have three values that we hold. So firstly, it's to connect with diverse peers from all around the world. Secondly, it's learning wide range of technical topics. And lastly, it's to grow ourselves along with the community. And moving on, today we have 6 DSCs, including me, who will be co-hosts for this event. In the next slide, you would see a link that would take you to a page where you can find us along with other DSCs and also find upcoming events hosted by them. Thank you so much for your time. I would like to pass it over to DSC Binus for their personal chapter introductions. Over to you. DSC, the representative from DSC Binus, if he or she is not here, then we can skip this introduction and go to the next DSC.
Hi, sorry.
Okay.
I can't open my mic earlier. So
Oh,
hi guys. Sorry for the inconvenience there. I'm Melvin, DSC core team from Binus University, and here I'm going to represent Binus University, Binus Communication University, about what are we. Now, here in Binus University, we will love to educate and we will love to inform you guys about how we implement tech in the latest tech in the industry and what is going on around the industry lately, such as for the men's tech and etc. I would love to pass it now to Georgetown. Here we do a lot of weekly workshop about latest tech.
Hello, can you guys hear me? Okay. Yeah, so I'm the representative from Georgetown University. And hi, I'm really excited to be here, really excited to see all your faces. Our chapter's goal is to stimulate mutual interest in tech around the campus and around the region. And our DSU chapter is run by a disruptive technology club on Georgetown. And we made this club to share the interest in tech and make a comfortable space for people to talk about our mutual interest. And you can find us in this website and Instagram tag. So yeah, I hope you enjoy the event.
Thank you, Georgetown. Hi, everyone. I'm Akil Ahlam, the co-tech lead from DSC Monash University, Malaysia, and I'm here to introduce our chapter. Okay. So our goal with this club is to bridge the gap between knowledge and skills, theory and practice for all student developers. Can you hear me? Yeah. And to achieve that, we have several
yes, we can hear
events
you.
planned. Okay, sorry. And to achieve this goal, we have several events planned for 2021, such as Android Study Jam, the Cloud Study Jam, and Explore Machine Learning, and many more in store. So you can find us on the links presented here. And thank you for your time. And now I'll pass it on to DSC UGM. Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Mario Adriel and I'm the lead of DSC UGM. So our goal is to learn, connect, and solve local problem. And this is our team. We have 8 people in it. And next slide. And we've held many events. Most of them are online. And we're going to have a Firebase workshop on Saturday. So please make sure to follow our social medias. Next slide. In dsc.ugm at Instagram. Please enjoy the event. Thank you.
All right. So unfortunately, the representative from DSC NUST is not here, so I'll be representing them now. So is the DSC lead, and they have organized a bunch of events throughout the past semester, such as how to think of 10x ideas, bootcamp, Android study jams, etc. Moving to the next slide. Moving to the next slide. Yeah. You can find them through Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram using the handles that you see on the slide. So next, I would like to pass it to DSC Bandung.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Wisnu. I'm going to introduce you about DSC, Institut Teknologi Bandung. Established in 2018, right now our community has been growing fast with 144 members that from many backgrounds besides computer science. We grow together by helping students bridge the gap between theory and practice by organizing tech workshops about current popular technologies and other exciting stuff. Next slide. We're open to any collaboration, so feel free to contact us with the link below. Thank you guys. Back to Sajid.
All right, so thank you everyone for that wonderful introduction. My fellow DSC leads, nice to see you here. And I would like to pass the time to Cynthia to take it over from here.
Okay, thank you, Sajid, for that. And then, well, I would like to take your time any longer, but first of all, I'd like to thank you for the DIC as our co-host and also our media partner for the Petani Coding and also Dunia Coding for helping to spread this event news to the everyone outside. And then, yes, right now I think we're gonna enter the session of this afternoon, but first of all, let me call our moderator today. This will be Mr. Jing Cho Yang, our CEO. Hi, sir.
Hi, Cynthia. How you doing?
Yes, I'm very good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Cool. Then I will pass it the time to you, and then you can welcome the Quincy Larson as well. And to you guys, enjoy the talk.
Okay. Thank you very much, Cynthia, for being a great host. I'm actually wearing the same shirt that I am in this photo, and I got like the same beard too today. My name is Jing. I'm the CEO of Bukit Vista, and basically we are here in Bali to inspire delight. As part of our program, Cynthia and our co-hosts from DFC have organized a wonderful program. We have brought a very influential figure from computer science, somebody who has inspired delight to countless numbers of new programming students and people who love software. So it is my proud honor today to invite Quincy in. So a little bit about myself. I am the CEO and co-founder of Bukit Vista. I studied at UC Berkeley in 2002 in computer science and electrical engineering. I haven't worked a day in computer science despite having that degree. But previously, I worked at Airbnb and also Aman Resorts in the hospitality industry. And as a fun fact, I was once an extra in a Bollywood movie. And for our main speaker and guest today, I'll pass it over to Quincy. Quincy I've known actually from a very funny time. I was in San Francisco back in 2012, reconsidering my life, thinking about moving back to the United States. And that's where I met Quincy. That time was a very exciting, it was like the start of the mobile social revolution in technology. And Quincy and I were attending some meetups, and we happened to bump into each other quite frequently at hackathons. And we became good friends. We enjoyed hot pot together. Our families got to know each other, and it was really, really cool. So I'll let Quincy speak a little bit about himself and introduce himself there. Over to you, Quincy.
Hey, thank you, Jing, for that very nice introduction. Is my mic working okay? Can everybody hear me all right? Okay, fantastic. I'm gonna kind of hold my mic up like this so it doesn't brush against my beard. So yeah, I have very fond memories of hanging out with Jing in San Francisco at a very special moment in kind of tech history when everything was profoundly positive before a lot of the things that have happened since that era. That was kind of a simpler time when, merely getting a startup going, you were automatically doing something that was good for society, it seemed like. But yeah, I learned a ton, and I had a great time. And Jing met me when I had just left my background as a software engineer, or I'm sorry, I just left my background as a teacher and as a school director. And it was my first time to really live in San Francisco and to try to go to hackathons and try to go to tech events and try to actually hang out with developers. I felt like a big interloper and a kind of a poser, if you're familiar with that word. So it was cool to hang out with Jing because he actually had like the street cred. He had the CSEE from Berkeley. And even though he says he never worked as a software engineer, like it was still, that was much more of a badge than I'd merely worked as a software engineer for like a few months, like maybe a year in Santa Barbara. It wasn't even in San Francisco. So yeah, it was very cool of you to give me the time of day.
I remember Quincy would always be actually asking, could we do pair programming together? Could we do pair programming together? And I was like, I don't know if I can code anymore. But I remember you being very adamant about that. That was incredible. Okay, Quincy, I'll continue now. And I'll go really briefly to the next slide. This is just a reminder for everybody who's joining our talk today. We have a question panel on Slido, which is essentially a place where you can write your questions, and upvote questions are topics that you would like to have discussed in the audience section at the towards the end of the talk. So please utilize this resource. Somebody at Bukit Vista will put a link in the general chat, and you can click on it. And during the time, if you have any questions or you'd like to engage, this is a good way for our large audience to engage with us. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to get this thing started. This is the moment we all have been waiting for, right? So Quincy is here, and from DSC UGM, they would like to pose this question first, Quincy. And that is, what makes you inspired to build freeCodeCamp, and what were the struggles?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a great question. Thank you to everybody over there at DSC. So, yeah, the big challenge for me when I had to learn to code on my own. I did have the benefit of having a patient wife who was willing to let me leave my job as a software engineer, or I'm sorry, as a school instructor and a school director. She let me leave that job, and she let me just focus on learning to code all day. So I was able to. It saved a whole bunch of my money because we were going to try to buy a house in California, which is very expensive. As I'm sure Jing can tell you, it was prohibitively expensive. Like you could save up for years and years and barely have a down payment to get a mortgage. And so I'd saved up some money, and that was enough for me to eat ramen noodles and just kind of learn to code on my own. But that struggle, like the ambiguity, not knowing what to learn, not knowing how to go about learning things. I found myself at like libraries, just like, okay, look, I found a Java book. Let's see if we can progress. It was very much a haphazard, chaotic process. And when I finally got a job as a developer and I looked back at all the struggle, I thought, well, surely I could make this a clearer path for other people. And so that was a big inspiration for freeCodeCamp. Was I didn't want people to have to struggle the way I struggled to figure out what to learn, because learning to code is hard enough if you know what to learn. So that was absolutely like the struggle that kind of inspired freeCodeCamp. And there are a lot of other reasons that I wanted to create a resource like this. I wanted to unlock a lot of people who wanted to be creative, who wanted to be able to have careers where they'd be able to work remotely and both apply kind of the analytical side of the brain and the creative side. And I think software development is one of those fields. So I wanted to give them that ability. So those are all reasons.
And Quincy, if I can ask you just kind of like a follow-up to that. At the time, I remember it seemed like such an obvious idea, right? Now that if you go back to 2012, why didn't anybody lay down this path? Did that question arise to you? Like, hey, has anybody else done this already? Or I remember even at the time there were a lot of boot camps that you pay this stupendous amount of money to and you learn from. Did that seem like a contrary contrast to what you were trying to do with freeCodeCamp?
Yeah, well, I read a lot about Jimmy Wales, who founded Wikipedia, and he was deadly afraid every night he'd have nightmares that some big company was going to release like a better version of Wikipedia. And he was so sure that Wikipedia was doomed because he would not be able to lead like an organization that would be able to stand the test of time. And yet nobody really came to compete with him after he launched. And you're right, like it seemed like a pretty obvious thing. I'm actually surprised there weren't more people doing it. There were lots of like blogs that would publish like, here's a list of free courses and things like that, but very few people are actually creating free interactive courses. Now, if you go to YouTube, you can watch courses for free. You have to watch ads, but you can like watch courses for free, or you can buy programming courses on like Udemy or other sites like that and learn, but those aren't free. You're paying for it. So there wasn't really anybody who was doing it free and doing it like fully interactive like we were.
Mhm.
And there were sites that had like free parts of it, and then you had to pay to access the more advanced stuff. So
Got it.
yeah.
Okay. Quincy, I've got another kind of, let's say, follow-up in that. If you were to like kind of trace the beginnings again, was there like a different flavor of struggle at each stage of building like freeCodeCamp? Like we talked about like kind of like the initial part, and then like when you got like a bit of traction, you were getting things going. Did other sort of roadblocks and challenges come up?
Absolutely. The first big challenge was just getting people to care. And if you're an entrepreneur, if you're in like the food industry, perhaps people already know they need to eat. So it makes it a little easier. But if you're in the teaching people to program field, like a lot of people don't realize, oh, I really should learn programming. So it felt like I was spending a whole lot of time and energy just writing blog posts and like meeting with anybody I could meet with to try to tell them like, no, really, you can learn to code and you should learn to code. There's a lot of opportunity there, and it's a good skill to have, and you can acquire it outside of, you know, Berkeley. You could potentially just use open courseware and things like that and learn it. So that initial struggle to first convince people that they should learn to code, and also that they should use freeCodeCamp's free learning resources to do so. So that struggle for initial, you know, passion or traction, product market fit, so to speak. And a big part of that was just trying and failing over and over. And, you know, when I'm at Jing, it was before I'd started freeCodeCamp, and I was iterating on other education technology ideas that didn't pan out. So by the time I got to freeCodeCamp, it was like the third or fourth iteration of different serious endeavors that I'd gone down to try to help people learn to code and learn about technology. So yeah, there was a lot of trial and error there, and just getting people to care was the first thing. The second thing, of course, was sustainability. Like, how do we take a free open source organization, a nonprofit, and how do we get it to sustain itself? And the way we did that ultimately was we just, once we got tax exempt status, we were able to start raising funds through donations. We sold t-shirts, freeCodeCamp t-shirts, like the one I'm wearing. Like, this was how we paid for freeCodeCamp initially. We was just selling t-shirts and trying to convince people, selling stickers. Like I would print a bunch of freeCodeCamp stickers and put them in the mail and mail them to people. And the international, you know, stamp was only $1, and I sold the stickers for $5. So I would like net $4 on each package that I mailed to people. And that was a big part of sustaining it early on. So yeah. And then once we got to break even, you know, the struggle is just keeping everything going. And there's so many risks and you know, known problems and unknown unknowns that you don't even know how to prepare for. And yeah. So
Okay.
there's plenty of stuff. It's not as tumultuous and chaotic as it was early on, but there are still lots of things that could be waiting, you know, in the proverbial underneath the water. There could be a lot of rocks. So we have to be very careful whenever we jump.
Okay. All right. Definitely. Sorry, everyone. I lost the connection for a moment there, but I just got back. And thank you, Quincy, for the first question. The next question is from Monash, and this one's a little bit longer. So programming can be daunting to many, especially if the person doesn't have an IT background. And how did you design the courses on your website in such a way that it will be approachable for people with minimal technical background to engage in?
Yeah, well, this is something I learned when I worked as a journalist. Like, you want to kind of invert the pyramid, so to speak. If you imagine like a pyramid, like if you start from the top and you start with like more advanced stuff, you're going to lose people. And the surest way to lose people in any sort of engineering field is to show them big mathematical equations. So what we did was we started I intentionally structured the curriculum where you learned HTML and CSS first, because even though I think like really it would be great if people would like learn how to, you know, how computers work, how to do memory management in C, learn how algorithms work, all that stuff. I realized that a lot of people would get discouraged if we threw them right into that. So we start with like just building a basic cat photo app with HTML and CSS. And so we kept things as simple as possible to kind of give them lots of small wins early on, so they felt momentum. And then after they got that momentum, that's when we hit them with like, okay, and now it's going to get hard, but it's hard for everybody, you know, and we try to constantly reassure people programming is hard. If somebody tells you programming is easy, they're trying to sell you something, right? Because it's not easy. It's hard. So yeah, we always kept that in mind. The fact that at any time, Reddit is just an alt tab away. Facebook is just an alt tab away. Like people have all the entertainment they could ever want. Just all they have to do is punch a few keys on their keyboard and they're there. What are you going to do to keep them learning? And the key is, first of all, just making them not rage quit.
Got it. And in this particular regard, would you say, Quincy, that having a background in, let's say, maybe like a non-engineering background, and maybe carrying over some of those values from journalism helped you make a course that was more digestible and more easy for learners to pick up?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. There's this thing that we teach, in education. It's called the beginner's mindset. And you have to be able to put yourself in the shoes of someone who is just starting for the first time. Like, what kind of questions would they have? What kind of possible misinterpretations might they have? What kind of blind alleys might they try to go down? How can you close those off? How can you figure out all the ways to keep people on that critical path, that nice golden yellow brick road, right? And because I had just learned to program myself and gone through this very tumultuous process, that like Business Insider wrote an article about like how I had almost kind of like, shock or post-traumatic stress from like trying to learn to code by myself and how hard it was. And all the, doubt I had and the imposter syndrome and all that. So I was able to channel that and say, okay, yes, like it's hard. And people are probably going to feel similar to how I felt, maybe even less confident than I felt. So that our goal is to really keep people with that beginner's mindset and structure everything around that beginner's mindset. So yes, I do think that definitely my background as a teacher, and the fact that I learned to code at age 31, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm already 28. Is it too late for me to learn to code and change careers? Well, I learned when I was 31, right? And I know plenty of people who learn in their 40s and even 50s. I know a woman who was 55 and she learned to code and she got a job at Apple. So it can definitely happen. You can do it. It's just a question of, how confident you are. And I always tell people, like, learning to code is not a technical challenge. Anybody who is sufficiently motivated can learn to code. Anybody who's sufficiently motivated can probably learn a lot of things like advanced math. The main challenge is motivation. How can you stay motivated, and how can you not let yourself get discouraged, and how can you not quit? And if you do quit, how can you get up a few days later and say, well, even though I quit, I'm going to try again? Because people inevitably do quit. And what we see is people kind of ricochet back and forth into freeCodeCamp. And over the course of years, maybe it'll take them like 2 or 3 tries. Then they get in the groove, and then they start really making progress.
Okay. All right. That sounds very interesting. That's a lot of like just to contrast that, when I learned how to do coding in engineering school, it was the opposite way, right? It was, they throw like all the theory at you first. I remember the first things I learned was recursion, and that boggled me so much. And I think that killed my actual interest in pursuing, and like what you just said, it killed the motivation because they put the hardest thing in front. Whereas if I think I could build up, like, oh, you can do cool things with this. You don't need to sound like a researcher. You can actually go from a more practical perspective. I think that was really cool.
Yeah, and I'll tell you one thing to note about the way, like, why are engineering schools so hard on people? Why do they have what we call weeder classes to essentially discourage people? Like, you're not tough enough for electrical engineering. Get out of here. Go to the liberal arts college, right? Like why do they have those? It's because they have these scarce seats. Like the entire university system is based around like this sense of scarcity, economics, right? Like, you only have so many seats. You only have so many professors. A professor can only give so many students like so much time. A TA can only grade so many. So it's this scarcity. But when you start getting rid of scarcity through, frankly, automation, which is what we've done, we just programmatically grade all the assignments and programmatically like focus on building a single monolithic curriculum that everybody goes through, as opposed to having like a bunch of electives and stuff. Like, why don't you tailor it down and you get it to where, like right now, as I speak, there are probably about 2,000 people using freeCodeCamp, maybe 3,000 people using freeCodeCamp right now. And none of us are like there grading papers or like welcoming people in or orienting people or anything. It's all systematic. So once you kind of move into the realm of systems, it gives you the ability to just bring people on, and no longer do you need to worry about turning people away. You want to welcome as many people as possible. So
Wow.
That kind of change allows for you to nurture people and bring them along and let them take their time. And also, you know, if you're in a class with a human professor, they have to constantly stop and answer what they perceive to be naive questions. That's going to like hold up the entire, like everybody else is waiting and stuff. But if you can silo people and get everything completely self-paced and everybody can work on their own thread, to use a computer science concept, then you can get like this massively parallel community where everybody's learning, everybody's making progress, but nobody's waiting for anybody.
Yep. That's brilliant, actually. I totally understand the scalability of learning by systems, actually. And I never thought of that as a constraint. That's a really good insight, Quincy. We're going to have a question just later down on the line that sort of pits this new model of learning versus traditional learning. So that one coming up soon. I'll move over to the next question to get us, and that actually kind of hits the nail on the head right there, actually. So this is from NUST, and I guess we can expand on that. Do you feel that the current way we're educating children really fully prepares them for the needs of the 21st century?
I think that like literacy and numeracy are the most important skills, and the rest of it is a lot to do with just like mindset. And if you can read and if you know basic math and know like have some experience learning other languages, have some experience interacting with other people, like operating within a business culture, operating within a foreign culture, all of those things, you'll be pretty well equipped, and you can probably just learn what you need en route. Like history, ethics, law, things like that. Those are generally like non-linear. You can just kind of spider your way through them. Now, like more hierarchical skills like math, specific fields of science like physics, chemistry, definitely, things like that. Those are hierarchical and those are harder to learn just on your own. But I think that like with what MIT has done and what the Cal and all the other California school system, California University, and then of course Stanford and Carnegie Mellon and all these different schools, they're basically taking a lot of their curriculum and they're making them freely available. So it's just a matter if you know how to learn and you have some basic knowledge, you could, like, a kid could go to like one of the worst schools and probably still figure things out. Like I didn't go to the worst school by any means, but I did go to one of the more mediocre, like I grew up in one of the poorer states in the United States, Oklahoma. And I went to a cheap state university, right? Like it was very cheap. And I studied English and journalism, right? I didn't study any technical topics, but I feel like because I felt, confident, perhaps naively confident, and because I was able to just kind of muscle my way into the room and talk to the people and maybe pretend that I knew enough to get into certain social circles and stuff, I feel like I was able to pick things up. And I think that other people can do that too. I met plenty of people who were in the United States on like a student visa who were able to learn a whole lot of things. And many of them were able to like win entrepreneurship competitions and things like that, right? Like a lot of it just has to do with like how interested and how willing you are to learn. So, like I do have 2 young children, and, we're not drilling them on Chinese, for example. Like my wife's Chinese. And I spent like 6 years in China. We probably could be teaching them Chinese a whole lot more. Like we could probably be teaching them piano and violin and all the things that a tiger mom would make the kids learn, right? But instead, we're just kind of like, hey, what are you interested in? The Scandinavian, like Norway has like a particularly good school system, right? And it's all about like nurturing and encouraging kids. And then, so I think to some extent, like this question, the current way we are educating children. Like, well, frankly, there's a big difference between how Norway is teaching and China's teaching and like the United States are teaching, right? A lot of it comes down to like, are the kids getting enough nutrition? Are the kids getting enough sleep? Are the kids going out and playing with one another? You know, I mean, when there's not a pandemic, all those things. Like, I think those things are probably more important than the specific content of the school. And if the kid has access to the internet and knows how to read, they could basically learn whatever they didn't learn in school. So there's that nice safety net.
Definitely. It sounds to me that, you know, I understand completely what you just said about this process of like, you have to hustle to learn, right? You have to get yourself into the right circles. Cause you know, we were both part of that process. I'd come back, I had an engineering degree, but I didn't study engineering at all. And I didn't practice for like a decade. And I was, you know, I might as well have been a beginner again anyway. Nobody believed my credentials after a decade, but I felt like that process of really striving based on an interest, really striving to get yourself into the right circles, as you put it, get into the right places. They say that you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with. So if I'm going to be a software programmer, then the 5 people I hang out with should be software programmers. And I think, do you think that then it's more of like, how do you then bring out that sort of self-interest and self-drive in each particular student? That's the key like direction that educators should go into.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, teachers should be nice and helpful. I know. And I think university professors, it doesn't matter if you have like a freaking, you know, Turing Award or something. You still need to be a chill human being, or else I'm not going to want to hang out with you. I'll go learn from somebody else, or I'll read your book, but I'm not going to hang out with you, you know, that kind of thing. So I think fundamentally, like, a lot of it should come down to like respect and empathy and things like that. And that's something to be completely candid. Like, here in the United States, we've lost a lot of that. Like, people are really pretty brisk with one another. And I mean, depending on where you go, obviously, like if you're in like California and you're hanging out with like in like Walnut Creek or, you know, Alameda or you know, one of these nicer areas of San Francisco, people are going to be more educated, and they're going to generally be more patient, and they're going to be more interested in you. But you know, if you go to like hard scrabble parts of the United States, especially in the middle, like away from the coast, you're bound to encounter a lot of people who just wouldn't, to say an American expression, they wouldn't cross the street to pee on you if you were on fire. So yeah, like there is a lot of malice, and that's assuming that people are like the same race as you, and you know, like there can be straight up contempt. And there's a lot of racism here in the United States. And I imagine, you know, I know that it's everywhere, but it's particularly pronounced here in the United States. For me, because I'm an American, I grew up here, and you know, there's a great shame in that aspect of our national heritage and stuff. And I think that a lot of what we're trying to do, certainly if you've been watching American politics, and I will speak on American politics, although freeCodeCamp, to be completely candid, has no political position. We're a nonprofit, and we're completely neutral on this. But I mean, you could see it playing out. You can see the lack of respect and politeness in how the presidential race was handled. I mean, it's crazy. So, and that's not something that we've historically had right at the surface. Like, a lot of that stuff has been under the surface. But I think that you know, teachers being really respectful to kids, parents being really respectful to teachers, in some cultures, like, you know, Singapore, Korea, people are very respectful to teachers. Teachers, you know, is this elevated role within society. And then you've got America, where teachers are just kind of dumped on, and like parents are condescending to the teachers. I mean, it depends on the school. It depends on the parents and the teachers, of course. But, you know, I think we want to get back to a position where, you know, teachers are exalted and there's a higher degree of respect. So that's just a little rant there about it. But yeah, I think if people are more respectful and more empathetic, that'll solve a lot of the stuff. You don't need state-of-the-art curriculum. I mean, people could just be reading old history books and old math books. Most stuff hasn't changed that much. most of the fundamental stuff you need to know to succeed hasn't fundamentally changed. I'm not in the camp that like everything's changing so fast, you know, kids are not going to be able to possibly adapt to this world, or the jobs are going to be automated. You know, I think that like those kinds of changes are much slower than people may think.
I agree. I think the core is always going to be there. And this is a really good point about the aspect of respect and the attitude actually to learning creates ultimately. And that's probably what drove a lot of people to freeCodeCamp. They were curious about it and they were self-interested. And okay, let's we need to move on to the next topic. So I'll drop the fourth topic, which comes from
Sure, and I
Georgetown.
can give shorter answers. Just if I'm talking too long, just.
Oh no, this is great. This is great. I think it's really good to. And people are here to understand you, Quincy. So we need to get all the juicy bits out. Okay, but the next question is from Georgetown University, and it's what would be the discrepancy between coders and non-coders in the future, where it is eminent for technology to be omnipresent. Wow. Okay, there's a lot of big words there, but I think it means like what happens to non-coders in the future world, and in a place where there's technology everywhere.
Right. So, I mean, I look at coding as basically just getting things done through machines. If you want to think of it that way, like telling a machine what to do. In some ways, you could say like programming like is still programming, right? Or yeah. So there are like no-code tools, for example. So-called no-code tools that are basically you just wire a bunch of APIs together through like some sort of graphical user interface. If it works, it works, you know. If you're getting means to the end, and the end is usually just helping people solve whatever problem they have, right? So I think programming is getting way easier. Like it's much easier to code in Python or JavaScript than it is to code in like assembly, like my, you know, grandma might have programmed in or something like that, right? Like my grandma actually was a nurse. She wasn't a programmer, but a lot of people's you know, grandma, and then it became less common. And then now it's basically just kind of like, there are probably fewer developers in terms of writing the code. Anyway, so using the technology and getting things done. A lot of people used to say like, oh, Quincy, you know, are you like, can you really build the developer in terms of like technical ability, but I'm good at getting things done. And that was always how I justified, you know, charging people $100 an hour or whatever to build their web apps. So, yeah, I don't think that there's going to be like, first of all, everybody's going to learn to code, whether they like it or not. Like virtually all STEM jobs involve coding. I don't know any PhD students who can't code, at least a little bit, right? So I think that like it or not, people are going to have to learn to code. The real question is whether they become like, you know, top coder, you know, red or something like that, or whether they are really good enough to be able to quickly take some code off of Stack Overflow and work it into whatever legacy code base they're maintaining. So yeah, I'm not too worried about it.
Okay. What about the people who just don't code at all? Let's say people who have no coding capabilities, like I don't know, salespeople or people who work in marketing. Do you see that as being, let's say, are we going to progress to a sort of a world where coding becomes like even like almost like a language? Like you talked about numeracy and literacy. Is codacy a potential minimum qualification for education in the future? Being able to speak with computers through code.
Yeah, codacy. That sounds epic. All right. First of all, I would argue that most people would benefit from learning at least a little coding. Like, even if it's just like using Excel more powerfully, using like basic relational databases, knowing how to do SQL queries. I think, so I look at coding as, you know, traditionally most businesses was done by humans managing other humans. And now a lot of business is done by humans managing both humans, other humans, and machines. Like if you have a web server that is, handling, bookings or something like that, right? Like in some ways you could say like making sure that server stays up and does everything it's supposed to do and helping improve that. That's kind of like training an employee or, doing routine HR meetings with them to help them improve how they do their job, right? So I think managers are increasingly going to be learning to code. I mean, even though you joke about not really coding that much, you still learned quite a bit, I'm sure. Like it's not easy to get a CSE degree from Berkeley. I wouldn't be surprised if that a lot of that stuff came back pretty easily if you sat down. Let's get some pointers with C. No, you're probably going to be using like some really high level language or some sort of, some tools that make it relatively easy to strap things together. And the tools get better and better all the time. React is very powerful. Node.js is very powerful. You've got, Python libraries. Like you can do full on data science with just a few like include statements in Python, import statements in Python stuff. I mean, it's incredible how user friendly a lot of these tools are getting. So my advice would be don't be daunted. And, your friends that are doing sales, they may figure out ways to automate just kind of routine parts of their job if they do put in some time learning. Yeah.
That's a really good point. And I do agree with that. I work in a lot of human resources these days. And the funny thing is when we develop like things completely for people, like trial programs, I think about it like a program. I think about it like what's the first stage, what's the second stage, what's the feedback loop look like. So even having, let's say, just a coding mindset, I think allows you to design systems, even if they are human systems, to work better. Okay, all right, great question from Georgetown. Thank you for that topic. I'll go on to the next topic, which is now this is back to the traditional education versus freeCodeCamp education. Quincy's already spoken about how the automation and the sort of the self-learning path, the self-pacing path is advantageous, and it doesn't have that resource scarcity that universities have. But do you think that freeCodeCamp curriculums can actually beat those offered by universities? A few of the co-hosts came in the very beginning and they said they learned more from your program than they did at school. So what do you think about that?
So freeCodeCamp serves kind of a different purpose than like a traditional university. And we're not trying to compete with universities. Like I would never tell somebody like, oh, don't go to university, just use freeCodeCamp. First of all, university degrees are very entrenched socially. Like if you want to get a visa to like certain countries, you have to have a university degree to prove that you're like a professional. If you like the US military, like the difference between not having a degree and having a degree is like the equivalent of like 10 or 20 years of hard work, basically. Like it takes a lot to overcome not having a degree in the US military. In fact, like they'll probably just pay for you to go back and get a university degree so they can say, yeah, all of our officers have degrees, right? So, and that's just the US military. Like I imagine it's similar with a lot of countries, but and socially, like a social marker, like if you don't have a degree, people might perceive you as different. In some countries, it's just like, you just don't have a career. You're going to be, bussing tables at a restaurant for the rest of your life, or you're going to be mopping floors. And that's what you can do. So a lot of social mobility is tied to university degrees. What freeCodeCamp is trying to do is basically, like, I would say freeCodeCamp is good for not having to go back to school. If you've already been working in a field for a while, or you, let's say you do have an undergraduate degree and you're like, oh, do I need to go back and get a master's degree? Or do I need to get a second undergraduate degree in computer science? Because I have this degree in English, but I want to work as a software engineer. Well, freeCodeCamp's there to say like, oh, no, you don't necessarily have to go back to school. And you don't even necessarily need to quit your job or spend any money. You can basically just do nights and weekends and essentially retrain yourself using these free learning resources and, the community around them, the forum and the chat rooms. And of course, like when there's not a global pandemic, the study groups in person at different libraries and different venues like that, local employers, stuff like that. So the important thing to note is like I want universities to thrive. I want universities to be free here in the United States, or at least community colleges. And that's President Biden's plan, is to make community colleges free. I think that those would all be very good from a social perspective. Do I think university is way too expensive? Absolutely. Do I think that most university education is kind of like squandered resources? Absolutely. But I think that there's a lot that can be fixed without blowing up the entire system. And freeCodeCamp is actually used by a lot of universities. They'll use freeCodeCamp as part of their curriculum, or like, a lot of companies will use freeCodeCamp as a free way to retrain their staff instead of paying for them to go get a master's degree or something like that. So I'm always very happy. And we intentionally made freeCodeCamp have like the most permissive open source license. It's the BSc3. It's basically the MIT license. We also gave it like a very permissive Creative Commons license. So people can like take freeCodeCamp and just reincorporate it into whatever they're using for their own internal training at their company, or universities can run freeCodeCamp locally. We even have here in the United States prison systems where people can't get online because as a prisoner in the United States, you're not allowed to get on the internet. Well, you can run freeCodeCamp on a local area network and people can use it there. So our goal is basically just making it, we just want to reduce the number of excuses that people have to not learn to code and not change careers, essentially, and by removing as much friction as we can.
That's amazing, actually. If I found freeCodeCamp back in 2012, I would never have then considered like going to any of those boot camp systems and stuff. What you spoke about was actually very, very true about this. I felt like I had to retrench myself and go through and get a master's degree in computer science again. And for what really is skills that I think you can learn if you were properly instructed. I do see a lot of cases actually in like I've had discussions with people who are in universities here in Southeast Asia, and the universities don't actually have computer science or data science departments yet. They have evolved mathematics or other traditional science departments to be involved in computer science. And it's in those programs where I think a lot of students, they're picking up a lot of the true learnings from your site, from your programs. Is this unintentional, I guess, effect of freeCodeCamp something that you want to endorse more, or like is it like I've heard people just come up to me and said, I don't learn anything in computer science class, but I said, how do you know how to program? This is I go on freeCodeCamp, but I learn how to program there. In class, I just daze out, and the professor doesn't really teach me anything. So in those specific cases, do you have a particular vision for how that can be a alternative to university, or just something that even is superior to a university education?
Again, I think that universities are always going to be like this great place for hanging out and making friends and potentially finding your spouse. Like I met my wife in grad school, right? We were both students in a Chinese MBA program. So it does perform like a valuable function. And I don't think that freeCodeCamp can really reproduce that. And it doesn't need to reproduce that. Like there are some countries that just don't have good universities. And maybe they'll eventually build up those universities, but those people can have access to freeCodeCamp and other free learning resources online and complement or supplement their university studies. Even if a school doesn't have like a very good programming curriculum, they have a math program, if they've got a good English program, if they've got like good kind of like philosophy departments and critical thinking type skills, take advantage of those. A lot of what programming is really just working with other humans. And I would argue that in many cases, like a liberal arts degree is almost as useful as a computer science degree, in the sense that you're going to have a good feel for how to interact with humans and how to predict the behavior of humans, which is extremely valuable. Like if you look at a lot of the richest people in the United States, like most of them are software engineers, but a lot of them are like philosophy students who like are very good at predicting what humans are going to do. And then they can use that predictive ability to basically go where people are going to be going first. You know, if you could predict, for example, that the United States was going to descend into chaos in 2016, then you probably could have like bought a bunch of Bitcoin, right? So little things like that, like just take advantage of what your university strong suits are. And I wouldn't lament, you know, the fact that the computer science is underdeveloped. I talk to people all the time from India, for example, and India has some great schools, but it also has a ton of really mediocre schools. So does the United States. And they're constantly like, oh, I'm so sad. Like, you know, I couldn't get into this great school and now I'm stuck and my teacher's teaching like Pascal or like basic, you know, or something like that. And I don't feel like I'm learning anything. First of all, programming is programming. Like you're going to encounter the same data structures regardless of what language you're using. Just learn whatever your teacher's teaching and then go and learn JavaScript on the side. I think JavaScript's the best, most flexible language. And Python, of course, we cover Python a lot and freeCodeCamp as well. We're getting ready. By the way, this is an announcement. We're gonna dramatically expand the Python curriculum to include a lot of machine learning and a lot more mathematics. So stay tuned for that announcement, probably next week. Yeah, just make use of what your school does do well, and focus on having fun and making friends and learning to socialize effectively. That's what I would tell the university students who feel like they're trapped at a mediocre university. Again, I went to a very mediocre university. I actually removed it from my LinkedIn because I wanted to say that I went to a mediocre university without harming like my colleagues who also in my classmates. You know, I don't want to slight my university. It wasn't the greatest university, but it was okay. It was good enough because it gave me the opportunity to like meet people and to like read and learn. And my professors, in America, it's so competitive to be a university professor that even if you're at a mediocre school, your professor's probably still like some rock star because they managed to get a professorship.
Very true. Very true. Okay. Thank you, Quincy, for giving us that. It's a very balanced and surprising answer as well, considering the cachet that freeCodeCamp has. Okay, let's go on to our, I believe this is one of our last topics. And this is from ITB, which is Institut Teknologi Bandung, it's the MIT of Indonesia. Software engineering is growing rapidly and becoming the promising job in the future. How to start a career as a software engineer in 2021?
Yeah, well, first I'd say if you're in a CS degree program, don't drop out, just stick with it. The Mark Zuckerbergs and Bill Gates of the world are outliers. It definitely helps to have the degree. And if you're going to go to school and study computer science, like I think it'd be foolish to study any other major if you're interested in really like becoming a software engineer. Like I wouldn't study computer engineering. I wouldn't study software engineering, even though it seems like, oh, a software engineer, you want to get a software. At least in the US, like a computer science degree is valued so much more because it's standard. Everybody knows what a computer science degree means. An employer doesn't necessarily know what an MIS degree is or some sort of IT type degree. They don't necessarily know what a software engineering or some hybrid role, and even like electrical engineering. I think that's good. You're learning basically the same foundations, but an employer might not understand what that means. So CS degree, it's almost like a brand. Like computer science degree is a very powerful brand that you're putting on your resume, regardless of where you studied. And then I would just spend a ton of time actually programming. Don't get too mired in like the abstract conceptual stuff. Like definitely learn that, but I would definitely recommend going to as many hackathons as possible, building as many projects as possible. And if you look at the freeCodeCamp curriculum, we've got more than 70 projects that you build to get through the freeCodeCamp curriculum, and we're adding more than 100 additional projects. And there's no shortage of projects out there. Like you just Google like programming projects and you'll find tons of different ideas. Just build those. Spend some time on, HackerRank or Code Wars is another good site. freeCodeCamp, we have all of Project Euler problems, which are really good for like understanding mathematics and programming at the same time. And then just, Leak Code can be good for practicing those algorithm drills. Like just program is really my advice. And keep in mind that your skills are only part of the puzzle. The other two things that are really important, your reputation and, what you're known for. Have you deployed a production app that people are actually using, right? Even if it's a silly thing like a meme generator or something. If people are using it and you're maintaining it, that's a feather in your cap. That's proof that you can actually, ship something and maintain it. Try to get internships where you're working with like big legacy code bases. In the real world, like, you're probably not going to be building a new code base from scratch. You're probably going to be working on a big team where you've got this ugly code base that's been around for years, and you need to keep the servers from falling over. You need to figure out how to patch new features into this archaic, like, inefficient structure and go through and gradually refactor it over the course of years. So that would be my advice. And then the last component, I said there are 3 components. There's the skills, the reputation, but also the network. And just go to events like this, of course. Like, meet like the people that are on this call. These people could be like your network. Just reach out to some of them afterward. If you don't already know some people, just try to get to know people. I say spend a lot of time on Twitter, spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, especially. I think LinkedIn is particularly valuable, and build that network.
Okay, fantastic. So skills, your brand, and your professional network. And I actually saw you do all of this in your own journey. Quincy, like I said earlier, was, I think you went on meetup.com, right? Same as me. Because I remember seeing, I would be at a hackathon in one part of the Bay Area and Quincy would be there. And then I'd go to like a building to do some pair programming and Quincy would be there. And we bumped into each other so often. And I didn't know at the time that both of us would actually, that would be it, right? Both of us would become entrepreneurs and we'd start our own businesses. So I think for the people in this room, the people in this room are the people who obviously care. They want to, they're here because they're self-interested. Okay, cool. I'm going to move on to the next topic, and this is where I think things get a bit more exciting. This is where we can start looking at what the audience has wanted to say. So I'll turn over to, okay, there we go. All right, so we got a few topics up here. Thank you very much, Shaylin, for showing these. And the most upvoted topic is this. Let's take a look at it. As nowadays, technology is still changing so much. So what do you think in the future would be an important skill to acquire as a basic or an advanced skill? I think we explored some of these already, but Quincy, is there anything new that you would like to add on this besides learning how to network, learning your skill sets, learning how to develop your brand?
Yeah, from a pure programming perspective, I just get really good at either JavaScript or Python. They're high-level scripting languages with massive ecosystems. And I would just choose one language, one ecosystem, and I just spend a ton of time there. Listen to if you're in Python, listen to all the Python podcasts, read all the Python newsletters, hang out in the Python. They're probably like private Discords and Slacks and stuff like that where people talk about those things. Just go really deep on one really big, ecosystem, and you'll get all kinds of opportunities down the road, and contribute to open source if you can. That'll be a good way to apply your skills while building your reputation. Yeah, that would be my basic thing is don't get too lost in like new databases, new development frameworks or anything like really go back to basics. That's my answer. Can you all still hear me? Okay, cool. Okay, Jing's having some AV issues. I'm gonna go ahead and just take the second one right here. That's okay. Cool. How hard/easy is it to have a career as a software engineer in the US as an Indonesian? Okay, that's a great question. What should I prepare? Does pursuing a master's degree in the US help? Okay, so when I was in grad school in the US, I had lots of friends from India, especially, but I had a few friends from Indonesia. There was like an Indonesia Student Association, which is really cool. So I think that yes, if you can come to I wouldn't recommend coming to the US right now. Obviously, pandemic is out of control here. It's horrible here, and it's a huge national embarrassment as an American that our federal government couldn't get things under control, because this shouldn't have been a big deal. It should have been like Australia. It should have been like Korea, but unfortunately, that's not how it turned out, and it's going to take a lot of work to clean this up. Don't go to the US, probably. You probably want to go to like Canada. Australia is a good place. You're actually really close to Australia. Australia has like really chill people. I was there a couple of years ago. I was just blown away at how cool a place it is. And the people there are very friendly, and it's a very multicultural society that's very tolerant as well, if that's a consideration. I would strongly recommend going to Australia and studying if you can. New Zealand also. I have a lot of friends who studied abroad in New Zealand. If you can get a master's degree overseas, that can be a good in for you to have like a visa, which gives you a legal reason to be able to hang out and potentially intern or do a lot of these hackathon type events, entrepreneurial competitions, things like that I was talking about earlier. So yeah, I do think that studying abroad can be a great way. Now it does cost money to study abroad, so not everybody has like family money or the ability to obtain a coveted scholarship. So I would say, another alternative route is to get a job at a multinational company that's in Indonesia, and just after, a few months or something, tell your employee like, hey, if you get any opportunities abroad, I'd really like to transfer abroad. And even if it means signing a contract to work for them for 3 years or something, even if it means like taking like restrictions to get a visa, once you get overseas, you have a lot more options for staying overseas. And so, yeah, I would definitely encourage you to do that. Sorry, Jing, I took that question since you
no worries. Hey, thank you for that. Thank you. Apologize for the internet here. It's been a little bit spotty today. No, I think that's a great question. Quincy, I've been wondering, this is kind of like a pivot on that question, which is, since now companies are, more into remote working, it really doesn't matter if you're in the US or not, right? Do you think that eventually like companies like Apple or Facebook, Google, they'll just start hiring the best programmers anywhere in the world, and not necessarily, you don't even need to be in the US to actually get like a US job experience?
I do, but at the same time, to some extent, I think that there's like limits to how high you can climb in an organization as a remote worker from overseas.
Right.
I think working remote is actually really good for like a second or third job. Your first job, if you can work in the office with people, you'll be able to build more bonds. You'll be able to meet people. Like there was this study from C-Trip, which is a Chinese travel company. They did this just before everybody started working remotely in 2020, right? This is like the only really large quantitative data they had on remote work. But this Chinese company, C-Trip, had basically said, to like several hundred of their employees, okay, you can work remotely. And what they found is the people who were working remotely, their productivity went up, but they actually were like less likely to get promoted and less likely. So they were actually getting more done, but their managers were less aware of their contributions. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they weren't in the room, so they just weren't on the managers' minds. I don't think that like freeCodeCamp has always been a completely remote organization, but a lot of that's due to necessity. If we had like millions of dollars in VC funding, we would probably have like some sort of headquarters. And like we probably actually maybe relocate people to that, or we'd at least have like satellite offices and stuff. But that's prohibitive for us. Like our entire budget, it's crazy to think about it, but our entire budget is like $500,000 US a year. Like our entire organization operates off that.
That's amazing. That's amazing that you can stay so lean.
Well, yeah, and a lot of it's just like not having an office, and everybody works remotely, and yeah. But I do think that it definitely helps, and humans are humans. Like that's the thing, is fundamentally humans haven't changed since 100,000 years ago, or whatever you believe. But like the scientific consensus is Africa 100,000 years ago, humans arose, and mostly we haven't changed psychologically. Like we have all this stuff around us, but humans are still humans, and physical proximity, those kinds of interpersonal relationships still dictate so much of society. And so I would say like limiting yourself to not actually being in the same country as like the rest of the team, it is going to potentially hold you back. Now you can potentially overcome that, but it's a challenge. It's just like learning a local language. Like when I was in China, I met lots of people who were doing business in China, like usually international trade and stuff like that. And many of them just didn't learn any Chinese. And it was clear that they like kind of hit like a glass ceiling. You couldn't go any higher if you didn't learn Chinese, because like a lot of the big conversations, you were left out of those conversations, because like maybe they turn around, they speak English to you, but then they turn back to the rest of the table and they'd be speaking Chinese again, right? And so I think it's the same thing. Like you want to move to the country, you want to learn the local culture, you want to learn the local language, you want to learn the history, you want to be able to be a part of it as much as possible. And you can still retain your own heritage and your own essence. Like nothing's going to change the fact that I'm some white guy, even if I'm in China. Nothing's going to change the fact that I grew up in, rural, kind of like Midwestern Oklahoma, like the middle of the United States. But I can still kind of be that layer of me on top of that, so to speak. So if you look at it that way, I think it gives you a lot of options.
Okay, thank you, Quincy. That's actually a very good holistic perspective on career building too. Oh, okay, this seems like the most popular topic. A lot of people want to connect with you. What's the best way to connect with you?
Absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter. You could connect me on LinkedIn, but like LinkedIn only allows you to have 35,000 connections. And I messaged them repeatedly. I'm like, please, like people are sending me connections. I can't accept them. But no, it's like a hard limit. Like you can't have, so you can follow me on LinkedIn, which doesn't really do anything because I don't really post on LinkedIn that much. But if you follow me on Twitter, that would be a good way. And then if you want to talk to me, if you have questions for me, just email me. I'm Quincy at freecodecamp.org. Here, I'll write it in the chat. Quincy at freecodecamp.org. It's not letting me send the message. Oh, wait, hang on one second. How do I change it to where I'm sharing it with everyone?
Oh, we'll put it in for you. Yeah. So
actually, there it is. And then
there you go. Okay.
Twitter.com/OSSIA. And you can DM me on Twitter too. I have open DMs. If I don't respond to your Twitter DM, it's because I didn't see it. Because Twitter, like the most reliable way is just to send me an email.
Okay, cool. All right.
And if you email me, don't email me, can I ask you a question? Just ask your question. That'll save some back and forth.
Some people are very polite and they've done it already if they've asked you if they can ask you a question, right? Okay, good one. Thank you. Let's see. I'll read a few of these and let me prioritize. Masters in Actually, let's go with this one. I'm currently doing a master's in IT, mostly on machine learning enhancement. So is that a good thing over work experience?
I mean, if you're getting a master's, like I would definitely try to get an internship or a job while you're getting your master's. So I'm in this kind of weird camp where I don't think that people should actually drop everything and just go to school and be full-time students. I think in most cases, people benefit from working while they're in school. And, professional experience is worth a lot more than university degrees. But university degrees can help you get your foot in the door to get your first professional experience. And they can help you learn skills and stuff. I generally tell people don't even bother going back to master's to get a graduate degree until you're like several years into your career, because a lot of like if you get an MBA and you're fresh out of undergraduate and you just go back and get an MBA, you don't have context. You don't understand how it all fits together and why, for example, like the asset ratio is so important to a company, why it's important to advertise or things like that, right? So, yeah, I would recommend but specifically getting a master's degree in IT. I don't know enough about your program. I don't know enough about your background, and because you're anonymous, I can't even ask you to elaborate on it. Unfortunately.
Don't be anonymous. Don't be anonymous, everyone. Tell us who you are. Okay, that one's actually a good point, Quincy, because I remember I was actually thinking about getting a master's as well, and I ended up working at a startup, and it was far more useful. I always said that like working at that startup was going and getting a master's degree, because it was far more, the context was right, and also there's a mission and there's the overall package. It's not handling in isolation. Okay, cool. Let me go to this one. This one actually is not anonymous. It's Anu Rude Bargavat. So this one's actually pretty fun. How could you discuss some of the basic mistakes that you made when you went about making freeCodeCamp? Like, was there anything that?
Yeah, there were many. There were many.
You wouldn't do again.
And it's easy to talk about mistakes because everything's worked out in the end, or at least at this point, things are working out, right? We don't know what the future holds, but like we did, like for example, we did a job board at one point, and people were like lining up to pay us money to have job listings. But what I quickly realized was we couldn't control the quality of those jobs in terms of like we couldn't actually like follow the person to that company and make sure that they had a good experience there and that they weren't getting taken advantage of, or that it wasn't like a hostile workplace or something like that. And we didn't think it was worth, potentially the bad press of like us linking somebody up with like this company that's, and I know that like maybe people are like, oh, well, it's just a job board, but we really wanted everything to be as good as possible. So we retired that job board we did so after having spent like weeks and weeks implementing it. So it was essentially wasted effort. Some other things that I learned, don't try to run a business purely off of merchandise, like supporting your business. Okay, and here's so like I said, I was like mailing stickers, and it was just like, go to the post office, buy a bunch of stamps. I had at one time I watched the entire. It was like what was it? Luke Cage. So it was on Netflix. Luke Cage, like the Marvel. I watched the entire season of Luke Cage while I was licking envelopes and like putting stamps on envelopes and loading them up with stickers, so I could just more efficiently send them out. So, and when you're like the founder of an organization and like the CEO, or I'm technically executive director, which is like the CEO of a nonprofit. And when that's how you're spending your Friday nights is like licking envelopes, and I didn't actually lick them. I had like a little moisture thing, but basically like putting stickers in envelopes and stamping address things. When you're doing that kind of thing, yes, it did get us through like the early days, but I wish a lot earlier I'd discovered like, recurring monthly donations. It's much better to have a recursive business model where you essentially make a sale once and then, that sale keeps bringing in revenue. And freeCodeCamp, like I'm very transparent about this. We have about 7,000 people around the world who give us $5 a month. And you could very quickly like add that up and figure out, so freeCodeCamp's making about $35,000 a month US in donations, and that's about accurate. And then we get grants and other things on top of that. But that's a really good business model because it's 7,000 people all over the world. Granted, about maybe almost 2/3 of them are here in the US. And the US has, like, people talk bad about the US, but the US is actually the most charitable place on earth in terms of the amount of money given. We give tons of money away, especially to like nonprofits here in the US, which is great. And so we're the beneficiaries of a lot of that generosity here, freeCodeCamp is. But we essentially convince people at one point, like, hey, give us $5 a month. And they do it, and on average, people give for 14 months before they stop. So it's essentially like a $5 sale that turns into $70 worth of revenue. So that is a really good mess. Like I definitely encourage people to take like subscription or recurring type business models if they can, because it's just very powerful. But yeah, that was one of the mistakes, and we experimented with this a lot, but none of these mistakes were fatal or anything like that. It was just like, let's have lots of different options. Like, you can give us one-time donation. We spent like months like implementing all these different types of donations that you could give us and stuff. And 99% of people are just giving us the base $5 a month donation, right? So we peeled all that stuff out, and actually it increased conversion because people didn't have to like figure out how they wanted to donate. They just clicked the button to donate and put it their credit card or their PayPal. So those are some of the many, many mistakes. I mean, there are lots of more embarrassing mistakes that I could tell you if you're looking for some juicy, embarrassing mistake. To save money, sure. To save money, we wrote our own email blast script. Some of you have mentioned that, like, I think in chat, some people might have mentioned that they get my email. I send out an email to 4 million people each week, and it's just like a bunch of links to articles that I think are useful. It's called 5 Links Worth Your Time. And some of them, sometimes we'll send out full-length courses on different topics like GraphQL or something like that. So anyway, like sending 4 million emails a week is expensive. If you use like MailChimp or something, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars a year just to send emails. Luckily, I'm a developer and I wrote a script to help me send these, and I just used like some really cheap like Amazon service. But there was a problem, and a loop did not exit properly, like a poor exit condition on a loop. And so I was meaning to send 100,000 people an email, and it was going to loop through like 100 people. And then after it sent them, okay, go to the next 100 people and do that 1,000 times, right? But I screwed up and I didn't exit the loop. So I just emailed the same 100 people 1,000 times each. So there were people like Quincy, please, like they were begging me to stop emailing them, and I was like, what's going on? But it all happened instantaneously, right? Like, I mean, when you write like a really efficient script, Node.js is fast. So by the time like I realized what had happened, the email blast had completed, and like, people just their inboxes were just 1,000 copies of the same email. Naturally, I think I got about 100 unsubscribes that week.
Oh yeah, that's okay. That is a pretty funny. Yeah. But it wasn't fatal. You didn't get blocked by like Gmail. No. Okay,
I mean, it might have hurt my email reputation a little bit, but yeah, I think we've recovered by now. This was pretty early days. Back when my email list was only 100,000 people instead of 4 million.
You can make that a case study in freeCodeCamp. How not to like accidentally write, how to properly close your loops. Okay. Yeah. All right. Cool. Good stuff. Let's see. I think we talked about this idea of the future of universities. I see one that's pretty interesting, actually, from Rico. If we could just kind of bring that up a little bit so I can see Rico's question. Which one method of management programming team that you use, Scrum or Waterfall? And Rico mentions that it's a little bit of a problem with managing his team. Like that's a good question. How do you do a daily stand-up? Do you do Scrum, Waterfall? What's your go-to method?
Yeah, so it's kind of like a bastardization of Agile. Like we don't use a specific flavor. I think the flavor we're most similar to is extreme programming, XP, as it's called. But we do weekly stand-ups, and then we do like our team breaks out into meetings as needed. So, for example, like our curriculum team would meet, and like our localization team would meet, and our instructional design, like tutorial team, and then our YouTube team, like all these different teams just meet. And actually the teams, like many people are a part of different teams. So think of it like not a Venn diagram. Well, maybe a bunch of Venn diagrams overlaid on one another. So, I could be part of several of those, but I wouldn't necessarily go to the localization team, but I would go to the YouTube team or and then everybody, like our team's only 12 people. That's the other thing. We have 12 people who work full time, and then we have some other people who just work part time or on like a kind of a case by case basis. Like they just design a single course, and then we contract with them again later. Next time we have a grant to create a course. So 12 people, it's pretty manageable. It's almost like one single Agile team. A lot of Agile is that methodology designed when you've got like Microsoft or some other big software company where you've got a whole lot of different teams, and you've got to break it down and then have like those teams leaders meet to coordinate as well. The smaller your team, the less communication overhead and the more fast and loose you can play with Agile. If we were a big team, I guarantee you that we would need to bring in a professional like project manager to help coordinate everything. But as it is, I just kind of do it.
Okay, cool. I think you have what Bezos calls is the 2 pizza team. Now you can feed kind of like the 12 people with two large pizzas. Okay, cool.
I don't know. I could eat a whole pizza myself.
That's true. Yeah, that makes it. You and I would be a 2 pizza team. That would be it. Okay, fair enough. There's a really good one here that I like. Actually, there's 2 good ones. It's unfortunate they're anonymous. If you ask it, just put your name on it so we know who you are. Yeah? Do you have any advice for undergraduate students interested in freelancing as a newbie?
When there's not a global pandemic, go out to your local churches, mosques, your local businesses like grocery stores, hotels, anything, any kind of local business, and just like get to know them. Take a look at their website, take a look at their Facebook page, take a look at any sort of Google ads they're running, anything like that. Just try to find ways that they're doing things suboptimally and say like, hey, I can fix this for you. Just give me, whatever you think would be a reasonable amount, and then fix it for them, and then say like, hey, thanks, is there anything else I can do? Worst case scenario, you've got a successful client that you can put in your portfolio, and you can say like, you can go to the other store and you can say like, oh, hey, I just did this for Bob's Hardware down the road. You know, I can do this for you too. Why don't you ask Bob what he thinks of the stuff that I just did for him, you know? And you use them as a testimonial. It's just basic, like small business kind of sales techniques. Sales is a very useful skill, by the way. A lot of people talk negatively about sales or act like sales people are like these hollow vessels that just, you know, read Dale Carnegie books and like, you know, talk to themselves in the mirror to pump themselves up before doing some calls or something. It's a hard skill, and it's very useful. Like there's a saying that the higher you rise in any organization, the more your job resembles that of a salesman, because you're basically trying to get buy-in from different stakeholders, whether that's investors, whether that's your employees, whether that's potential customers. And a lot of big organizations, like the CEO goes out and does the sales. And a lot of what I do is when I work with potential grant makers, like for example, Google wanted us to create a TensorFlow course, and we did, and it's awesome, and it's got like 700,000 views on YouTube. That was sales, basically. Like they approached me, and we had the benefit is like inbound sales. They approached us and they said, how much would it cost to do this? And we negotiated back and forth, and I reassured them, and then I was very transparent about what our expectations were and set, you know, made sure to under promise and over deliver. That's a key thing you're going to learn. And it worked. And then they gave us another grant, and hopefully they'll give us future grants because we've got kind of a successful relationship. So, yeah, same thing in your local community. You don't have to be out of school to be able to do that. You don't even have to be, you know, in university. You could just go out and start doing that right now, tomorrow. Well, again, there's a global pandemic, so be mindful of that. But I do think meeting people in person, just approaching them in their place of business, and having done a little bit of research, that can go a long way. Excellent.
And I would tend to agree with what you just said. You know, going through like just, you know, being in engineering, there was such a big divide between engineers, the people who make things, and the people who sell things. And I realized when you want to be an entrepreneur, you need both, right? And you need to get both of these things together. And yeah, you know, like learning how to sell can actually take your product and actually find somebody who's willing to give you a livelihood for using your product. So that is a very valuable takeaway there. Okay, thank you for that. Let's see, we have, oh, this is an interesting one. So this goes to what mindset change would you say is needed for a developer to drop an office job and get started in their, oh, well, there's a lot of these. Wow, this is amazing. Okay, well, let's go with this one. What is needed for somebody to like drop an office job and take on the road to entrepreneurship and be innovative?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think people give jobs a bad rep. Entrepreneurs, like you should definitely be, entrepreneurship should not be the first thing you do, in my opinion, unless you're like a natural born, like Sir Richard Branson that never worked a job. Like, I think that's rare. I think jobs are a great way to make mistakes on somebody else's dime. Essentially, like somebody's paying you to do your job and you're learning how to do it well, and you're learning how to make your boss happy. And that boss is just a surrogate for your future investors or your future board as an entrepreneur. If you can't make that boss, like if you can't work for a boss, I'm sorry, but you're probably not going to be a successful entrepreneur. I think there's this myth that like people who can't, you know, entrepreneurs are people who don't tolerate working for other people and just like the office space thing, like I quit, you know, or, you know, I'm going to, in office space, I think they like embezzle a bunch of money or something. Like, don't be that. just take your time. Humans live a long time. Humans live like 80 years. It may feel like that's like, oh, when you're 40 years old, I just turned 40 this year, and you realize like, damn, I'm only halfway. Like I've got, if I'm lucky, I've got like another 40 years that I can do stuff. And now I'm as smart as I am now. Like imagine how much I can get done, right? Like if I had just tried to dive into entrepreneurialism, and I did, like I bought a bunch of vending machines and set them up around my city. And, you know, I did a bunch of different kind of odd entrepreneurial stuff. When I was a kid, I used to like play Mortal Kombat, and I like, this was before the internet. And I printed a whole bunch of like moves lists. Like Mortal Kombat has all these different moves and it's hard to remember them. And so I would go to the arcade, and arcades were this thing when, you know, when I was a kid, they had these video games in this place, and you go there and People would be there and they'd be playing the video games, and I'd be like, hey, I'll give you a pretty good game, huh? I've got a list of all the moves in the game. I'll sell it to you for $1. And that was kind of my first entree into entrepreneurialism, but people bought it. And it was a profitable venture in the sense that, like, I was just making some money that I could go spend on Mortal Kombat myself. But, you know, so definitely, like, learn. Just, I guess I would never leave your job unless you have a lot of runway. You can be entrepreneurial on the side. You might even be able to just approach your boss and try to get more responsibility. That's what I would do. I would say, like, how can I get on a path to management? Managing people is the core entrepreneurial skill. And I would say the secondary entrepreneurial skill is managing machines and being able to program. So you can make your company really efficient. And most importantly, so you don't have to pay some developer, like you don't have to raise a round of funding just to be able to find a developer to pay to do the MVP, to do your prototype. Developers like Silicon Valley, like all that VC money goes to two things. It goes to paying developers to build things, and it goes to Facebook ads. like that's what the entire Silicon Valley industrial complex is based around, is Facebook ads and expensive developers that you have to pay money to build MVPs for projects that are probably going to fail, but the developers, they get paid either way, right?
True. Back to it. Somebody's got to build it. Somebody's got to make it. That's a very funny way to put it. It kind of reminds me of the sort of abbreviated version of the military industrial complex. Okay. Let's so the time for audience topics is concluded at this moment. So we'll go back to the BVE talk. Thank you everybody for okay, all right, where are we now? Thank you everybody for contributing these ideas. Hello, am I?
Oh. I can see your slide, conclusion.
Oh, okay, all right, good. I couldn't see everybody, so I was wondering if I was still here. Okay, let's see. So this is pretty much it. I will ask for a moment for all the participants in the room to just quickly fill out our survey. So this is feedback about how much you enjoyed, or maybe you didn't enjoy, the BV talk that we had today with Quincy Larson. Cynthia will drop the link in the chat, and we can take just a minute for everybody to fill out the survey and just give us your most honest feedback. We are here to inspire delight, so we hope that some of the audience and some of our co-hosts have experienced a positive transformation through this e-talk. But if you have some advice on what we should do better next time, or any specific things, please feel free to share it here. I'll take a few seconds for everybody to fill it out, and then we will continue to the next stage of our e-talk.
Sir, if I may?
Yes, over to Cynthia.
Okay, thank you. So guys, please, you can submit your feedback to us, and then as we announced before that we were gonna have a e-certificate. So yes, that will be the way we will send the certificate to you guys. So please, you can enter your name and also the correct email. So it will help for us to send in your certificate letter.
Yes. Thank you very much, Cynthia. Yes, the e-certificate comes back from after this survey. Okay. While everybody is working on the survey, I will turn it over to Cynthia for the opportunity that we have next at Bukit Vista.
Okay, yes, sir. Thank you. But I think we missed one moment because we're gonna show Quincy about the enthusiasm of the audience today. Like they are so active and then so enthusiastic. So please, guys, can we take a picture, sir, together with Quincy?
Yes. Thank you, Cynthia, for the reminder.
Okay.
So. Okay, Cynthia, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, sir. So yes, please, to the audience, please turn on your camera because we're gonna show your enthusiasm I'm sorry, enthusiasm and also your energy back to Quincy. So yes, please turn on your camera and we're gonna take a picture together. And after that, I know that maybe several of you guys still have question on the Slido previously. After this, we're gonna having a post-huddle session that you might not have an opportunity to ask Quincy before. You can ask them. You can ask him there. So yes, okay. So for the photo, I think from Shelleen, or maybe the other team. Are you ready with that? Okay, to Nadia, I saw that Nadia is already show her thumb up. So okay, then I will count the three. Yeah, everyone has already turned on the camera. Okay, that's really cool. Okay, okay, I will count to three. 1, 2, 3. Okay, one more time. Then give us your biggest smile, or maybe like, yeah, the freestyle. I will count down from the back right now. 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you. I think Nadia already got it. And yep. Okay, then thank you so much. Yes. Do you have thing to answer, or you already pass it to me right now?
No, that's pretty much it on my side. Let me pass it back to Cynthia.
Okay, then thank you so much. Thank you so much to Quincy as well, and also to user for conducting this session. And it's a really great talk actually. And yeah, I saw that you have connect with your friend on the chat box. Just chat to them privately, ask their contact and networking as well. So actually, we are in Bukit Vista right now, also opening for a remote internship. So if you're interested to know more and then like to join us, here are several positions that actually open right now. So yes, basically this is from the front end developer intern, back end. Oops, okay, spoiler. Okay, and then QA and product owner, UI UX designer. And for further more information, you can please come and then check to our website that has been stayed on the chat box, like bukitvista.com/jobs. You can find so many job and internship opportunities there. So yes, I think that's pretty much it for this announcement for the internship one. And the next one, we have already a spoiler. You guys know this person. This is actually Reima. So she is come from San Francisco Bay Area, and then she is a former partner at 500 startup that funded Grab, Canva, Bukalapak, and then another big startups that we have already know, and also a leader in the US, Asia, venture capital, and entrepreneurship. So mostly we're gonna talk most about business in an investor perspective, and then yeah, we're having a business talk, and you are interested on that. I suggest you to start and also register on our website as well. It's still the same website that you came from before for this PVE talk as well. And then, yes, I think to the next one. And this is our Instagram. And if you're curious more about what will we have in the future, what will Bukit Vista BVE Talk have in the future, especially about the RAIMA information as well, you can check in our Instagram, that is BVE Talk. So yes, please follow, and then you can get a lot of information in the future about our next event. And that's pretty much it, I think. Then I'd like to thank you so much to you guys for coming this afternoon. I hope you don't skip your lunch. And thank you one more time to our co-hosts for the SC Monash, the SC Georgetown, the SC NAS Islamabad, the SC Binus Kemanggisan, the SC UGM, and also the SC ITB, and also our media partner, Petani Code and also Dunia Coding. Thank you so much for supporting our event. And then, yes, that's pretty much it. Sorry for maybe there is still like so many things that we should improve, but I hope you guys enjoy this session, enjoy this talk this afternoon. Keep wearing your mask if you're outside, and then stay healthy and stay safe. And I will see you on the next BPE talk, and let's come to the huddle session. See ya.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia.
Okay.
Okay, so this now it kind of goes into the huddle session. So
Yes.
this is just kind of like a casual get to know